Well, hey everybody, did the Delphi murder investigators botch the crime scene and the investigation altogether? And why are there different versions of that composite suspect sketch going around? Now, as this trial gets underway, I'm going to share my thoughts on these complex questions. Today, we're unraveling new details and shedding light on a couple of the latest developments in the Delphi murder trial against RichardAllen. He's accused of murdering Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Now, again, I'm joining you from Boston, Massachusetts. This is the site of the International Association of Chiefs of Police meetings. There's more than 25,000 police chiefs from all around the world here converging on the city to network and to learn from each other. But as we get started, I hope you'll take a quick moment, make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe channel, and don't forget to ring the bell for all of our notifications so that you never miss an update. Now let's dive in to this criminal case and some of the wacky things that are going on in the trial of RichardAllen, a man that many believe is Bridge Guy. Bridge Guy is the guy who ordered the victims down the hill. The opening statements by the prosecution and the defense a couple of days ago really gave us some insight into what each side is going to use as their basis for the trial. Now, the prosecution didn't pull any punches when they stated that RichardAllen not only followed Abby and Libby along the Mon and High Trail road, but that he used a firearm to control them when he ordered them to go down the hill. In the frenzied murder that followed, according to the prosecution, Allen cycled an unspent bullet through his .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun and it landed near the body of one of the victims. Now, police contend that they matched that unspent round to a .40 caliber weapon that they recovered from RichardAllen's home. The prosecution also told the jury that they would be using RichardAllen's jailhouse confessions, those 60 plus jailhouse confessions. Now, the defense dropped a huge bombshell when they announced that a hair was recovered from Abigail Williams' hand and that hair didn't belong to RichardAllen, landing what I thought was a solid win in creating concern in the jury's mind. Now, they also mentioned that they will be putting out evidence that raises concern about how the evidence in the case overall was handled. They likely will attack the length of the investigation and the reliability of RichardAllen's confessions, given his mental state at the time that they were made while he was incarcerated. Now, they intend on sharing evidence that shows that Allen confessed to other things during the same time he was confessing to those murders, and that the things he was confessing to were entirely untrue. They're going to bring in experts to argue that he was not mentally competent, and they'll bring in an expert to argue that that bullet, that casing that was matched to RichardAllen's weapon, could not be positively identified as coming from only RichardAllen's weapon. You know, whether we like it or not, it's necessary that the trial drift away from Abby and Libby and the focus is on RichardAllen's constitutional rights. But the girls cannot be forgotten in this process. It is so important that they too receive justice for the crimes that were committed against them. I mean, think about it. Liberty German was only 14 years old when she and her 13-year-old best friend Abigail Williams were murdered. These two did everything together. They were known for their bright personalities. Now, Libby is described as this intelligent and driven young girl who excelled academically and in sports. She was passionate about science, photography. She loved spending time with her family. Abby shared Libby's love for adventure and the outdoors, and together, these two were full of life. They cherished their friendship and their families and friends, making their tragic deaths even more heart-wrenching. You know, shortly after RichardAllen's arrest, concerns were raised about the police investigation. In particular, conversation started swirling around a number of items, and I want to just touch on those again as we kind of put this together today. First was delays that were occurring in identifying Richard Allen, or the killer in the Delphi case. Despite Allen being a resident of Delphi and having interactions with law enforcement early on, investigators didn't identify him as a suspect for more than 5 years. Critics question why the police failed to connect key evidence to Allen much sooner. The second thing is the handling of evidence, because there are accusations that the police might have overlooked or mishandled evidence that could have been used to expedite the case. For example, the defense has argued that crucial information was withheld, which could have exonerated Allen much earlier in this investigation and before his charges. Now, there are concerns about the confessions. Allen reportedly confessed more than 60 times while in custody of murdering the girls, but his defense team is claiming that these confessions were coerced or they're unreliable, stating that Allen was mentally distressed during those interrogations. Well, they weren't interrogations, and they weren't necessarily confessions in entirety. They were in admissions too. Now, there's scrutiny over how police obtained those statements, and that will all come out. The bullet evidence is going to be a major point of contention, and this is about that bullet that was found at the crime scene. It was an unfired or unspent bullet, which was linked to Allen's gun forensically. Now, the defense is arguing that this evidence may not be as strong as the prosecution is suggesting it is, raising questions about how it was processed along the way. I joined Barbara McDonald, senior producer of Court TV and creator of that cool podcast, Down the Hill, on Court TV to talk about two specific concerns in the Delphi murder investigation. First, the defense team's concern about multiple composite drawings being introduced by investigators and now stopped by the court. And two, the quality of the police investigation now that the hair on Abby's finger has been revealed. So let's first tackle the issue of multiple composite drawings. Allen's defense team is drawing attention to the two different composite sketches of potential suspects as part of their strategy to cast doubt on the investigation and its handling by law enforcement. Now, I believe their strategy is something that they can argue that the investigation was flawed, that Allen was wrongly accused, or that there might be other viable suspects. But here's why I believe they're making a big deal out of this, and I want to include a few reasons why I think the strategy is more of a distraction than useful information. And I hope you're not distracted by the sound of that protest going on outside of the hotel still, but that's the way it goes. So let's talk about confusion and doubt. The two composite sketches released by law enforcement in the Delphi case appear really different from each other. The first sketch, released in 2017, shows an older male, while the second, released in 2019, depicts a younger looking individual. The defense team is likely going to point out these discrepancies and use it to argue that investigators had a lack of clear direction and that the suspect's identity remained uncertain then and still today. By creating confusion in the jury's mind, the defense seeks to introduce reasonable doubt in the mind of those decision makers. So that's my first question, is what are your thoughts on this? And has this created doubt in your mind? Put your answer down below. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is this idea of potential misidentification on evidence. The defense might argue that Allen doesn't resemble either of the sketches, or that the differences between the sketches suggests that the witness descriptions are unreliable. By focusing on these kinds of inconsistencies, they aim to undermine the credibility of the case again against Allen. So here's my next question. Do you think Richard Allen resembles either of these composite drawings? And please put those answers down below. Now, another thing that the defense might be trying to do is they might be trying to show that law enforcement has committed a bunch of missteps in this case. By emphasizing the shifting focus between the two sketches, the defense might argue that law enforcement mishandled the investigation, or that they failed to adequately pursue all of the leads in this case. This could potentially weaken the prosecution's case by suggesting that Allen was identified as a suspect due to police desperation, that they got tunnel vision rather than move forward based on solid evidence. Now, these are just a few of the reasons why Richard Allen's defense team might be addressing these items. But let's look at why I think they could be a distraction in this entire thing and maybe backfire on the defense. First thing is that sketches are not always precise. They're sketches. I mean, some of them almost look comical at times. Composite sketches are often based on witness recollections, and these can be notoriously unreliable, especially under stressful kinds of traumatic circumstances. Now, eyewitness accounts can vary depending on factors like lighting, distance, or even the decay of our memory over time. It's possible that both sketches represent different perceptions of the same individual, but differences in memory lead to different variations. So keep that in mind, emphasizing that these sketches might be a distraction from stronger forensic evidence that directly links Richard Allen to the crimes. So now you might remember when I talked about an experience I had in the police academy many years ago. It was after lunch and we were in a really hot classroom and everybody was tired. They'd had a full meal and all of a sudden the door flew open and someone walked into the room and they fired a weapon. And the instructor in the front of the classroom fell to the ground as though he had been shot. Now, immediately, the instructor jumped up, the assailant left, and the instructor told us it was all just make-believe. But he asked us at that very moment to describe what the assailant looked like. And this was a room full of police officers in training. So you'd think they were people that had a pretty good sense about what was going on. Well, the descriptions were completely off the charts and completely foreign from each other. Some people thought he was tall. Others thought the suspect was small. Some said he was shooting a small caliber weapon, while others said he was shooting a .44 Magnum. Now remember, this was the time frame of the old Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry movies. Some people said he had a pockmarked face, red hair, blonde hair, dark hair. There were so many different descriptions of what this predator looked like that fired these fake shots, that it taught us all a lesson, and that is that our testimony can be influenced by the environment, our background, prejudices we might have, and many other factors. And so we have to take with a grain of salt eyewitness accounts of information and corroborate it with other pieces of evidence. Now, while we're talking about these composite sketches, I want to also bring out the point that they might be irrelevant to key pieces of evidence. In this case, law enforcement has likely gathered other forms of evidence, such as forensic data, cell phone records, or Allen's own admissions and confessions that might strongly link him to the crime. Now, if the defense focuses heavily on the sketches, it might distract the jury from more critical pieces of evidence. For instance, there have been reports of Allen admitting to being on the trail where the murders occurred, as well as other incriminating factors. If all you're doing is focusing on those those sketches and composite drawings, you could miss some of these important parts. You know, another thing is the shifting theory. And shifting theories don't always mean that the guilt shifts. Investigations can evolve over time, and the release of two different sketches might simply reflect that law enforcement received new information or they're reconsidering earlier leads. It doesn't necessarily indicate a major mistake, and it doesn't necessarily indicate that Allen should be excluded as a suspect in this case. The defense wants us to focus on reasonable doubt instead of guilt. They are tasked with creating reasonable doubt in the jury's mind. Highlighting the differences in those sketches can seem like an attempt to create confusion rather than engaging with core pieces of evidence. So in this way, it might be seen as a distraction technique that aims to make the prosecution's case seem weaker than it really is, without actually refuting key facts that link Allen to the murders. So let's catch a discussion that I had on Court TV about this issue and see if it brings up some additional questions in your mind, or if it helps you better understand some of the challenges of these kinds of investigative tools.
Mike King, in all your years in law enforcement and seeing trials happen with defendants at the defense table, do sketches typically come in at trial?
Well, if the sketch leads to a witness coming forward and saying, I saw that guy and he looks like my brother-in-law, that becomes a whole lot more important. But I think we have to put this in perspective too, Julia. When I think back on this, I think that was going through a series of time when they were thinking about an Anthony Schatz, if you remember, and whether Keegan Kline was tied to this. And you wonder sometimes, at least I find myself wondering, if law enforcement wasn't floating a little bit of a trial balloon as they put out this kind of information. The other thing I think about is we still don't know today, although I don't believe it's true, whether there were other people involved in these homicides. And could they have had multiple witnesses who saw people that looked differently, in effect, putting more than one person at the scene? That doesn't mean that RichardAllen did it, but it doesn't mean that he didn't do it either. And so I think we have to take each of these with a grain of salt, and we have to look at the timeline of when they're released, why they're released, and now law enforcement and the prosecution are in a position where they can start to reveal what their hand was, where they can say, here's why I was holding this card close to the vest, and it may have been to shake somebody up, to see if somebody would do something. They could have had something going on where they were monitoring a social media account and they wanted to see what happened when they put that up. There could be 1,000 different reasons, but from my perspective, it's just a bunch of noise when people say this proves that it couldn't be this individual or that individual, or this is something that has to be entered in.
You know, while it's understandable that the defense would use these differences between the two sketches as part of their strategy to suggest there are problems with the investigation, the strategy might prove to be more of a distraction than a help. The defense really needs to focus on the attention of the jury on evidence and raise doubt with the evidence, not with some of these things that I think probably don't make that big of a difference. Again, generally, composite sketches are not the most reliable tool or a central piece of evidence in criminal cases. The focus of sketches could shift attention away from more substantive evidence that might directly link RichardAllen to the crime. Well, hey folks, I'd like to pause for a moment to ask you to make a donation to the new Children's Justice Center construction project that we have underway here. You can do that by purchasing my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. We have been pushing the proceeds from that book, and this was written about my experience in taking down a big religious cult that was sexually abusing children. We've been pushing the proceeds toward a special building fund. Now, this video I'm showing shows the current state of that building, which is slated to open in April of 2025. In fact, the survivors of the Zion Society cult, who are now in their 40s, children at the time, back in 1991, many of them are going to be on hand for that grand opening in the spring and talking to the media. I'm really excited about it, and I really appreciate your support of it. I'd also like to invite you to pick up my book, She Knew No Fear. It's the story of the murder of my great-great-grandmother in 1891. I solved her murder 130 years later, and I think you'd really enjoy reading about her journey across the ocean and across the American plains before she was gunned down at a town celebration in 1891. You can purchase either book by clicking on the links in the description down below or by accessing it through the QR code on the screen. Now, this offer is only available to those of you who live in the United States, and I want you to know, if you buy the book, I'll personalize the book and I'll ship it to you for free. And if you've already purchased the book, consider getting it for a friend. It's a great way to donate to the Justice Center. You can use the link and just tell me that you'd like to contribute to the Justice Center and not get a book, and I'll pass your donation along. But now, let's get back to this discussion about the Delphi murder trial of Richard Allen. You know, I was surprised when the defense dropped the bombshell statement that a hair was recovered off of Abigail Williams' hand at the crime scene. I hadn't heard that. The judge was granting the defense a lot of leeway in their opening statements, in my opinion, and the defense scored a major victory in creating this question of doubt in the juror's mind right out of the gates. But again, like the other things we've talked about on the composite drawings, I think there's a risk in this. If the prosecution explains this hair quickly, it could create a sense of mistrust in the defense by members of the jury. I think this one is going to be really interesting to watch and see what happens. Well, at the same time, Richard Allen's defense team told jurors that the state of Indiana and the prosecutor's office are scrambling to figure out what to do with that hair that was recovered from Abby's finger. Now, I believe their strategy again was to create a sense of doubt about the prosecution's case and the thoroughness of their investigation. But this claim also serves as a way to raise questions in the minds of the jurors about the state's handling of key forensic evidence, suggesting that the prosecution is unprepared or possibly hiding weaknesses in their case. So the defense is going to use the hair to, number one, create doubt about the investigation and the investigator's competency. The defense wants to suggest that the state's case is flawed or incomplete. By claiming that the prosecution is scrambling over the hair evidence, they can argue that the state either mishandled critical forensic evidence or they delayed examining it, which might point to investigative incompetence. Now, this would make jurors question the strength of the prosecution's case against Allen. Everything would come into suspect at that point. It might also be that the defense is potentially suggesting an alternate theory or alternate suspect. You know, they were prevented from naming an unknown suspect. But here's a way to change that. A hair found at the crime scene, especially in such a significant place as one of the victim's fingers, could imply that a struggle happened or that there was direct contact with the real killer. If the defense hints that this hair doesn't match Allen, it opens up the possibility that someone else might have been involved in their deaths. By emphasizing this, they might introduce an alternate suspect theory, again, getting what they wanted weeks ago, which could create reasonable doubt about Allen's guilt. Now, the defense is questioning the timeliness and the integrity of the evidence as well. And the defense might suggest that the state's forensic analysis of the hair is either incomplete or has yielded inconclusive results. But by portraying that the prosecution is scrambling, they imply again that the state didn't prioritize this information. They didn't properly manage key pieces of evidence, and they potentially can cast doubt on the entire investigation and its integrity of the investigation. This could sway jurors who are looking for assurances that the prosecution and law enforcement handled evidence correctly. Now, keep in mind, there may be a number of reasons why the state didn't fully examine the hair evidence. And I'm scratching my head just like the rest of you, including the fact that they may have just plain blown it. But here are a couple of reasons why they may have not done it in the time frame that everyone's hoping. Forensic labs are often backlogged, and DNA testing on items like hair can take a long time, especially if it involves more complex forms of analysis like mitochondrial DNA testing and those kinds of things. Sometimes requires hair samples without a root, but this one has a root in it. Now, if the hair was covered without a root, the state may have faced delays in getting reliable results. But again, my understanding is this one has a root. So we're going to have to see, and we're going to have to hear why this thing has been delayed this long. The state may have been waiting for better technology or more context before submitting this for analysis. But holy cow, we're in the trial. You're running out of time. In some cases, law enforcement agencies hold off on analyzing pieces of evidence until they have a clearer idea of how it fits into the overall picture. They may have waited to test the hair in hopes of getting more contextual information from other pieces and parts of the case. The defense, in turn, might be trying to make it look like negligence and scrambling. The state, again, may have just blown it. Now, the state might also have thought that there wasn't a lot of real value in the hair analysis. So this one is going to be really challenging to see what their response is and how they handle this. And the quicker they handle it, the better it is going to be for them in the long run, I believe. The state might have tested the hair but received some inconclusive or partial results. And the defense could be capitalizing on that uncertainty to, again, question the hair's relevance. Now, if the prosecution is still determining how to present the hair evidence, the defense might be using that and interpreting it as a sign of weakness. This is really a difficult challenge for the prosecution right now. It has to be answered quickly. Now, it's possible that this approach conflicts with other pieces of evidence that the state's putting on too. And that really bothers us from an integrity standpoint. We don't know the answers, but it's possible that the hair evidence points in a direction that doesn't align nicely with the state's case against RichardAllen. For example, if the hair belonged to this unknown individual, doesn't match the suspect, isn't a family member, the prosecution might be really nervous about how they would introduce that at trial. But the defense is going to jump on that, emphasizing that the state is unsure about it. And that's going to create problems. So this thing could all boil down to trial strategy and timing. The prosecution may not have to disclose every aspect of their forensic findings to the defense yet, or maybe they're holding back on introducing the hair evidence until they have a more compelling narrative around it. I just don't know. And this one really caught me off guard. The defense might be trying to preemptively undermine this piece of evidence by framing it as something that the state hasn't properly prepared for because they don't really have a way to go around once they've made this kind of a statement. Again, by telling jurors that the prosecution is scrambling over the hair evidence, RichardAllen's defense team is likely trying to introduce the idea that the state isn't in control of its own case and that critical pieces of evidence might have been mishandled or neglected. And it potentially suggests that there are alternate suspects or explanations for this crime. However, delays in challenging and forensic testing, especially in complex cases like this, are not uncommon. And the state may simply be navigating the complexities of DNA analysis and how to present that information in court. The defense, again, is likely using this as a strategic move to weaken the prosecution's case, even if there are legitimate reasons for the delay of talking about and examining that hair. So let's jump back and watch a few minutes of my discussion with Julia Janae on Court TV about this very subject. I'd encourage you to go back and watch the entire interview, including Barbara McDonald's comments on the trial thus far. Now, Barbara's on site and she understands this case better than most. So think about going back and watching that entire interview.
Let's talk about those opening statements. Allen's defense attorney, Andrew Baldwin, told the jury this, that 2 days ago, law enforcement is, quote, scrambling a bit. There was a strand of hair found around her finger. And this case was messed up from the beginning. Evidence was lost. It is gone. Mike King, let me ask you first, what do you think they mean by the law enforcement scrambling in this case? We know that was pretty big information, that there's a strand of hair found in the hands of one of the victim and it doesn't match Richard Allen.
Yeah, so I have a hard time believing law enforcement found out 2 days ago there was a strand. The thing that I see happening is that someone dismissed it as not being tied to the crime or being that important, or it got bagged during the collection process at the crime scene or in the morgue. And during that autopsy, it was placed and put away, and there was so many things happening that it got overlooked. I think when they say law enforcement scrambling, I think they are scrambling right now because they're saying, hey, we can nip this one in the bud if we find something that ties this person to this hair to another family member, or we can identify where the hair originates, because there are so many places that hair could have come from. And you have to think about this from the perspective of looking at a crime scene. There are times when things drop onto a victim in a crime scene, especially if that victim is covered in blood and the blood's starting to get a little tacky, where things could affix. That could have been affixed as a rescue operation was in place, where somebody was checking to see if there's a pulse. And kind of hard to imagine, given the gravity of what we heard the condition of those girls was at the time.
Condition,
but there are
completely
so many
something
ways
that's going to be big in this case. Mike King and Barbara McDonald, we do have to go, but thank you for lending your expertise. This is a case that's been shrouded in secrecy from the beginning. The investigators have kept quiet. They've shared very little information with the public, and the judge overseeing this case isn't allowing the public to watch it on television or on the internet. The problem is, when there's no transparency and people are already questioning whether the right man has been arrested, it can create more distrust. Will the public trust this verdict once the jury reaches it?
Well, what are your thoughts, folks? I mean, I hope you'll enter them down below, and I hope you'll weigh in on the conversations started by others. Remember to be kind and appropriate, and make sure that you're following this compelling trial by keeping up on all the twists and turns that are coming down the pike. The testimony given on discovering the bodies of Abby and Libby were terribly sad if you caught those over the weekend. And they point to the gruesome nature of these murders. And hey, please look for Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, folks, make sure you're checking out Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button and ringing the bell so that you get all of our notifications. Please share Profiling Evil with all your contacts, and please give us a thumbs up. Hey, thanks so much for your support. From Boston, Massachusetts, and the International Chiefs of Police Conference, I want to say thank you. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.